There comes a time in life where you got to make a decision. You can write your own story or let someone else tell it for you. This is the show for that time. This is Bearded Wisdom.
So talk to me about how you got to this place of the fees that you charge, and do people balk at your pricing at all, or how do you approach that?
It's not balking. Real talk. As far as when you're on the road to mastery, you end up learning a lot about things, and I think for this industry, the hardest thing for people who are really good at it is differentiating yourself from people who aren't, because everyone's using the same sales script.
Yes.
And that makes it really difficult, because I've gone to conventions that'll be at, like, whether it be psychology or whether it be, coaching, or whether it be like, these different certification groups I've been through and all these different things I've been through. You go to their big events.
Yeah.
And if I have to be very open, I would say we would be lucky if even 10% of the people there actually had the gift to do it. Like, a lot of people want to share their opinions, but don't really have the gift.
Yeah.
And so when you're going around, you're almost realizing, like, oh, you have it. Like, there's a different level of connection for the people who have that ability. But then there's people who have read about the ability and they just want to share their opinion. And that's a very different person. That's not the same at all. And so how does that 10% differentiate themselves from the 90% is the hardest thing. Once I actually start talking with people who are, high value authors, or established psychologists, or PhDs, or coaches, or have some form of mastery in a craft, they have to challenge each other, and we should all be challenging each other. Are you one of the ones with the gift? Mm-hmm. Have you done the work, or did you just read the brochure and feel like you're qualified to give your opinion?
Yeah.
That makes it tricky for us to be able to say, how much is your pricing supposed to be? How much is your value supposed to be? And a lot of times people are overcharging for their opinion, but not able to actually use the gift. They're not able to give them the step-by-step. And this is why I have the video that the answers are not the solution. People want to tell them that the solution to your problem is the Rubik's Cube has all the sides are the same color. That's what you need. It's gonna be awesome. You solve your Rubik's Cube, you're gonna live your dreams. And They're like, I want it. I love the results. I want those results. That sounds great. And then they're like, mine's not doing it.
Yeah.
Well, the results are not the solution. The solution is each step it takes to solve your Rubik's Cube. But they're not talking about how to solve your Rubik's Cube. They're talking about the solution looks like this. Yeah. And that's where people are, do you have the gift, or are you just telling them the answer? Not the same thing. Right. And that's where the difference is when people start realizing you are one of the ones who helps them solve their cube, not the one who tells them the answer, then your value is different from everyone else.
Yes.
And that's where you can start saying, like, is this one of the ones where you'd say your pricing should be this amount or this amount? Now, everyone's trying to be high ticket, and most are doing low ticket work. And that's frustrating, is because people are trying to fake it till they make it.
Yeah.
But that's costing a lot of money. And I've spent probably over $100,000 in programs that are supposed to be the real deal, just for them to say, see, all the colors are the same on all sides. And I'm like, how did you do that though? I just know that all the colors are the same on each side, and you can do it too. I'm like, how do you do that? You'll find the way to do it. Just know that's what you're looking for. And I'm like, oh, there is no steps.
Yeah. Yes.
And I've spent a lot of money on that.
I just read randomly this morning, kind of picked up on a Kindle. Is it Kindle? I think it was a Kindle book. I wanted to, it was, because I wanted to read a little bit of the Gospel of Thomas, and that is the most amazing. I love the Gospel of Thomas. I'm like, this is it. But instead, it pulled up Thomas Merton as a deal, and so I opened it. I'm like, oh, I hadn't read him in a while, so I read just the preface real quick, and he was literally talking about, that's like his whole preface is, our whole purpose in life is to find our purpose. And it will take your entire life to really live into it and And even as you are passing through, passing this life, you will still be in service to your purpose, even in your death. And it's like, wow, man, this is such good, rich stuff. When you, yeah, I'm like, oh, I got to go back and read this.
Have
I gotta
you?
go back.
This is not a challenge in any way, just more of an awareness. Have you at this
Challenge
point
me.
discovered your purpose?
Yes, yes,
Like now, from my experience, the purpose is revealed on the journey. Your Odysseus
yes.
journey ends up revealing your purpose. Can you
That's it.
tell what and well, how did you arrive to and what is your purpose?
I'm my own best client first and foremost. So my purpose has been to, even when I think I've told you this before, but the whole tent maker, millionaire preacher thing that I had early on in life. You remember the Pauline concept? When I was a teenager, this was something put on my heart that was, I don't ever want to have to be paid by a church, but I want to be a tent maker like Paul was, the Apostle Paul, and be able to live freely without the burden of without burdening the church or anything. It was a kind of a hilarious idea at the time because of the fact that you know I wanted to be I would say I want to be a self-supported minister, which is kind of the opposite of following God, if you will. It's like, it's when you're a minister, you understand that God does this. So uh, that was then. And I've always known that I wanted to inspire people, but I didn't realize how I was going to have this incredible hijack of, like we all do, of this process of becoming okay with, not just okay, feeling great about who I am, loving who I am. And that my purpose is literally to support people who feel neglected, who feel not heard, who feel like they're not owning their space, and who really aren't. And it's in part because of that, their own insecurities. So helping them kind of break through that gap of between their purpose and the culture that is screaming at them, nah, just fall in line. Nah, just follow. No, do this. Follow this system. Follow this system. And this guy's going, I don't need no system. It's your Rubik's cube concept. I don't need you to tell me how to, do a Rubik's cube. Mine's a little different than yours. It's different colors. So when you tell me to do blue, there's no blue on mine, right? Or whatever it is. I don't know. Your metaphor will break down for me because you had more time with it. So that's it. I mean, that's really all it has been. And I think that the essence of it for me is I'm put here to love people. That's all. I am only here to love people. And that starts by first and foremost, me loving myself.
I like the idea of love who I am and love myself. Generally, when I find, and this would maybe be where the challenge would come in. When I find people who have discovered their purpose, there's a heavy aspect of burden that comes along with it. What would you say is the most, like, this is the heaviest part of my purpose?
The heaviest part of my purpose is actually having to be vulnerable to who I am in front of others to the fullest degree. To quit questioning. Oh, you started preaching. Oh, you didn't know what to say there. Like, it's just learning. It's learning to ask better questions to myself and to others. And in that space, I start to unlock everything within me and within others. Everything.
Like
Them.
connecting through authentic vulnerability?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, depending on people's personality types too, that can be one of the hardest things for people to do.
Oh,
For sure.
absolutely.
Especially my type 8s, it takes me forever to break them out.
Oh, yeah.
My
Oh, no
challenger
joke.
types. They're
No
like,
joke.
so you're saying not being the toughest and not being the baddest and not blocking all the attacks makes me stronger.
Yeah.
No,
Doesn't make any sense. Does
no.
not make any sense.
You're saying not going on the offensive and killing first makes me stronger.
Yeah.
No, nope. It really is such a funny thing to say vulnerability makes you stronger, especially where they're like that. This can't be the way.
Yeah.
I think this is an aspect to it. I'm actually excited to go on this journey with you too. I feel like I've also found a part of where my purpose is, but the burden that I have is very, very hard to do.
Yeah.
Remember, I told you like I have to take the mountains from others. I take their pain from them, and then I have to take that pain and give it to God. And that's a weird process for me, but he showed me how to do it in like this very unique way. I was not a big man of faith. I was the man who would challenge faith
Yeah.
until I said, let me surrender to this. And that was very weird. But in that means I have to go and take the nightmares, the horrors, the trauma, the PTSDs, the anxiety, the depression. I have to take that from them and take it onto myself so I can give that forward. And I was actually watching a scene from The Messiah, even just last night. There's a scene that I like. I wanted to save it, where the guy who's playing the Messiah in the show is in an interrogation on episode 4, and she was saying, "Oh, it sounds like it must be pretty, convenient for you to just go like, oh, I'm just everything that I do, I have no accountability because I just do it for God." And he's
Right.
like, "It is a difficult responsibility. God does not ask easy things."
Yeah.
And it seems like if you look at anybody, like you said, to the Bible or Thomas or anybody, when does God say, you get the easy job?
Oh, and I think that's just it when I talk about the vulnerability is it's 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 actually being okay to say that to the people that I'm working with, to actually own my insecurity in a moment, to truly and I think that's where the burden comes is because there is the idea of performing a role that you see a lot of coaches do, right? That are out there. They're just you're they're they're just telling him, "Watch me do this. Watch me fix the Rubik's cube." Right? Let me do it for you, and we can't. It can go a little ways for people. People can they can watch you, and then they can mimic it, and they can, you know, they can be like, "Oh, look, I solved a little bit of it," but when they get to the end of whatever that guy said is the solution, they're just going to find that there's another challenge at the end of that. And it was, okay, but how do I continue to sustain being able to do this for myself without you?
Yeah, well, I call that solving one side.
Yeah, that is. That's a great, yeah, it's solving one side. And so I believe that that vulnerability for me is it's more, I know that I have this task to speak. I think where the rubber meets the road for me is that I'm at the forefront of I've always done this, but of loving to please people. The 7 in me, that's the kind of the way we roll. Uh, that has a lot to do with neurodivergence as well. Like you don't fit in the box anyways, and so and people kind of tell you the things. Oh, you talk a lot, man, or uh, you're so esoteric, or man, your curiosity is amazing, or it's all these things that they kind of start to pick on you about in life because they don't have the confidence in themselves to speak about these things a lot of times. And that's where it breaks down for me is that's where the fear is. That's where the burden is. It's in I want to pour everything I've got into someone without being hurt and
Well,
without hurting them,
interesting.
which is
Interesting
impossible.
for
You got to
that.
take risks in that.
It's interesting for the second part. The first part makes sense. And I guess this is where I think you want to talk about a topic today is that in your purpose, you find that it is routed in service. And this means I serve others is where the burden comes from at the cost of some form of cost to myself to improve. And like you said, I have to, at the cost of letting down my armor for vulnerability so that I can authentically connect to make sure that I can pull people out of their damage. Like whatever it may be for your service, like
Right.
that's your burden. Now,
Yeah.
in order to fulfill your burden requires a high level of humility,
Yep.
a high level of being able to go like, let me put my ego at the door, for my ego is not my amigo in this game. And I
Yeah.
have to let that guy be here because, like you said, or we were talking before, at some point I feel like I am called to do a certain thing. This is a service I have to provide, and it is not an easy service to do. This is difficult to do.
Yeah.
And I have to make sure that I don't say it is me who's the man. I'm the one. And this is where we start getting into the the rabbit hole of things. Like you said, like trying to have I want to be able to do this thing without the judgment. I want to be vulnerable without somebody taking an attack. And I'm going to throw a term at you that I just started thinking about this morning. My girl was on fire today. We had a really good conversation this morning.
Nice.
And I started telling her, watch out for the Goldilocks. Now, Goldilocks is generally something that seems like it could be a benefit, like it's a good thing. Goldilocks zone for our Earth and, things like this, the perfect temperature. These things are all good. But on the other hand, Goldilocks was highly judgmental. This one's too hot. This one's too cold. That one's just right. You're too tall. You're too short. You're just right for me. And with highly charismatic people like Goldilocks, people will try to adjust themselves based on the judgments of others. And this makes it so you don't get a chance to do this vulnerable authenticity because you're trying to change yourself based on the judgment or the shame or the guilt that's placed on you from not fitting in or being accepted by a Goldilocks. You're too fat. You're too skinny. You're too loud. You're too quiet. You're too anything. Then couple that with you should, and then insert whatever. You should do this. You should do what I like. You should wear these shoes. You should have this makeup. You should wear that outfit. You should get this exercise equipment. You should.
Yep.
And we start to change ourselves, which takes us off of our purpose. You can't be you if you're trying to please Goldilocks, because
100%.
each person will take a part of you away.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And I think that that's kind of the looking back at my life, the amount of energy that is spent inside of the church of creating the codependence. I don't think it's intentional. I think they call it community. But what is really going on a lot of times is creating attachments for people inside of the church so that it can continue to be sustained. And so hence the idea of actually telling people it is your responsibility to give as a human being becomes one of fear. It becomes one of, oh no, so they have to pull the strings of, God's, I don't want to say God's wrath, but they have to point out, well, the widow's mite. Look what she did. She gave everything she had. And those rich people didn't, they just gave it, they tithed. And it's like, well, who do you want to be like? And you should feel ashamed if you're only giving and you go, wait a second. Like, this is supposed to be the joy of like we thrive when we give, when we, receiving is great. But if everybody goes around giving, you're always going to have enough. But instead, we're always taking, we're always fighting, we're always competing, we're always all those things. And it's a broken system. And that competition is one of the things that I believe creates the judgments, because you have to start labeling things with good or bad or, whatever it might be, in order to actually be able to pull out of that. It's like you have to create shame to create grace.
Well said. You have to create shame from them to be able to have grace. It's well said. It's in there pretty deep too, and it's very funny how much I have to knock you down for you to give me what I want. This happened. This is part of judgment. It's part of the way that the shame works. And I explain shame in a way to say shame doesn't do anything but stop you. That's all it's meant to do.
Yeah.
Now, that's all it does. It doesn't do more. It stops you because it makes you feel bad for what you are. And if you are not what I think you should be, if you are not matching with my judgment, you should stop and do what I say you should do. This is the way shame, judgment stack together. First, I have to take the wind out of your sails, and then I can redirect you to the direction I want. But it's not based on who you are or what your talents are or your gift or your purpose.
Right.
It's not based on any of this. It's based on what I want.
Yeah.
And none of it has anything to do with you.
Or what God wants.
Which is using God as a weapon. God does not enjoy that. It's not his thing. That's an interesting thing to say, like, the shame aspect of that. You're correct. That's a good point. Well said. 2 points for you.
Ooh,
I don't even know what the score means,
I
but
know.
yeah. And I was gonna go off on a totally different tangent on that one, but that one hit me good. Well done, man. Keep
Well,
going.
what
I'm
was the
sorry.
other
I
tangent? You don't need it now?
totally forgot. That was,
Hey,
what you just said was
welcome to the club.
beautiful.
Welcome to the club.
No, but yeah, but it is funny though. It is interesting to see how that shame stack works and how that works. But yeah, I look at this like especially when I goes with the enemy within and the parts of us that do have to check ourselves and see what it is. I explain like think if you were like a sailboat and this is how shame works. If you're a sailboat and you're on purpose, like you're on your mission, I have the thing that I'm meant to do. This is what I am laser focused. You know, when you have a goal or you have a vision or you have, you know, some achievement you want to do, it doesn't matter if it's weight loss or if it's diet plan or if it's building a business or starting a, like anything. If you have any dream at all, no matter what it is, even if it's to invent something, I don't care, write a book, whatever it is. When you're on, like, I'm focused,
Mm-hmm.
the different enemies within, like fear, when you look at doubt, you look at distractions, you look at excuses, they seem to shoot like cannons. And cannonballs have like there's a delay in the cannonball when it shoots. And so if you're on your mission and you're going and there's a cannon fired at you and you're going, it'll just miss you because you're moving. You're a moving target. And so fear, they're like, oh man, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? I was like, I don't care. I'm doing my thing. I'm not even paying attention to that right now. You go
Yeah.
right through that obstacle. You're like, oh man, I don't know if that's going to work. I'm like, compared to what? I got nothing else going on right now. That's all I'm doing. So I don't care. I'm doing it. Doesn't work. Doubt can't get you. You know, oh, well, you know, blah, blah, blah for like, you know, maybe that person will mess you up or maybe you shouldn't be doing that. And people start hitting you with all these things and they're cannonballs. And if you're
Right.
on fire, like, hey, maybe you should, let's go play video games all day or, hey, check out social media or whatever it would be. It's like, and they'll keep missing
Yeah.
until somebody shames you and knocks the wind out of your sails. And then you're a sitting duck. And then those big, long attacks start hitting.
Yeah.
And then those big attacks start hitting because you're not moving anymore. And when you're a sitting duck, that delay no longer matters. But when you're moving, the delay is a really big deal because they can't hit a moving target. And this is what shame does. You should feel bad for who you are, so stop moving towards your goal.
Yeah.
Stop moving. Stop focusing on what it is that you're meant to do. Stop doing that. And that's when distractions can get you. That's when doubt starts tearing your motivation apart. This is where excuses start creating some sort of barrier between yourself and authenticity. This is where fear starts to manifest all the things that could go wrong. And if you let that nurture long enough, it turns into anxiety.
Yeah.
And then you ultimately will quit. And that triggers your loss system. The dream has been lost. And now you're getting sad or angry or you're in denial. I'll just do it later. I got this. I'll do it later. It's just on the back burner.
Yep.
It's not true. Shame is just one thing. It doesn't do anything more than stop you. And if you don't catch it, it'll start making it so you get bombed by all the other things that wouldn't normally hit you if you were on fire. If you were going.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too that like shame and guilt, the two of those, well, they're the same thing, but the premise of what I see in them is they're necessary for redirection. The problem is we don't believe that. Instead of understanding that it's a it's supposed to turn us back to the path that we are called to, we get confused because the path has been told. That's part of the struggle, is that the path is not the path. It's like you're being shamed in that space of what somebody else's journey is. Like their journey is to believe what they believe. Their journey is to embrace the way that they see whatever it is. And now they're imposing it on me. And that's part of the critical thinking skills that our entire culture has lost, is the ability to understand what is truly important. And I think that's why I think I'm put here. This is where my purpose comes from, is the only reason that I'm here is to love. And the more that I can be in alignment with that, shame has no place. It has no place for me, because the moment somebody shames me, I'm able to be all one alone, right? All one with things, recognizing, oh yeah, I'm human. Once again, born into this impossible situation of that really is all about me beginning to truly love myself as I'm moving through my purpose, while others may be like, no, 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 that's not your purpose. The president says this is our purpose, or the preacher says this is our purpose, or my parents say this is our purpose. And then we get lost. We get lost in this sea of people who don't know where they're going. And yet we follow them anyways. They have no idea where they're going.
Yeah.
They claim to.
It's
Heaven,
interesting.
I'm going to heaven.
Because you try to change yourself to match what Goldilocks is telling you you should be.
Mhm.
But the thing is you're not Goldilocks, you're Papa Bear.
Yeah.
And Papa Bear likes his porridge cold, and Papa Bear likes his bed hard.
Yep.
But Papa Bear is not Goldilocks. And this is where you're watching people with this charisma, or people who have influence, or people who have status, tell you what you should be doing, but
Yes.
you're not them. And
That's
this
right.
goes against your direct authenticity.
Right.
Actually, guilt and shame are not the same. I'll give you a challenge on
Oh,
this one.
interesting. Okay,
They
yeah.
are different. Guilt is feel bad for what you did. Shame is feel bad for who you are.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that makes it a little different. You should feel bad for what you did. That's guilt. Feel guilty for something that you did. Now, shame is you shouldn't like yourself because of who you are, and they make you feel bad. I'll give you an example. When you teach a child to apologize, this is a Marshall Rosenberg thing when he talks about jackal speak. Say sorry. I'm sorry. No, say sorry and mean it. Say it like you mean it. I'm sorry. They don't learn anything new. They just feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry and apologizing, the way people use it, is a system of shame. This is to make you feel bad for who you are. And they try and add in guilt on top of it to make you feel bad, not only for what you did,
Yeah.
but for who you are.
That's very fair, because I can totally see a different use of that in that way, because of the fact that shame is the thing that perpetuates your guiltiness, and it creates the identity of guilt in
Correct.
guilt. And so you have music that sings how unworthy we are. and I mean, I'm talking about across the board. We're not just talking about any kind of religious music. We're talking about, all the songs that are out there, that a Taylor Swift song about how bad that dude was, how awful he is, and how, I don't even remember her lyrics, but basically, I wish he was dead kind of language. And whoever that guy is forever hearing that story every time Taylor Swift comes on the radio, right? And the guy that did that to somebody is like, oh man, she's telling me how shameful I was for breaking up with that girl or cheating on her. And so now my identity is I'm a cheater. And now guess what? I cheat. I cheat because I bought the lie.
They can. Or they can do what you said before, where
Totally.
the awareness of the mistake means now I can find the lesson, because every loss is
100%.
a lesson. But most are not being taught this today, because they're, again, back in their own thing again. Is a lot of ego involved in some of this. And why is that so? Why is there a lack of humility? Why is there a lack of awareness when it comes to guilt and shame are designed to show me that there's a mistake that was made that's meant to teach me something, but not to hold on to it, but to grow from it? This is not being taught, which is why we teach it so hard in the Warrior's Way. There is no blame, there's no shame, there's no judgment, there's no guilt. Those get in the way of the lesson you were meant to learn to grow.
Yeah.
And when you hold on to a yesterday for way too long, you're living in the past, and people who live in the past start falling into a depression. People in the future fall into anxiety. We need presence in the present. What did you learn from that mistake? Because every mistake is meant to teach you something. Now, when you're around people who shame you and guilt you for making a mistake to create that identity, especially if they're important in your life, a parent, a lover, a best friend, somebody important to you who's using this moment as a weapon to harm you over and over and over again, trying to shame you into a judgment to create a new identity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this leans into our idea of humility specifically is there is no shame. I don't think that you can feel shame in humility. I don't know that they align
It's
in any
weird.
way.
It's weird the connection piece to it, because shame is not a place of power, but is humility a place of power? Because
Oh,
it
I do.
seems
I do. And the reason why is because humility is a release of the expectations of others, in my opinion. This is my hot sports opinion. So in humility, it's I don't demand that you follow me. I live a life that is in alignment with my values and my purpose and my vision for where I believe I want to contribute, my expertise in this world. And then you get to decide whether you follow or you don't. And the agreements that I can have with myself in those things, which is part of the whole thing, your original question of the burden is it can be lonely sometimes. And so when you start having a lot of compadres coming alongside of you and walking with you, that can replace my ability to be in alignment with who I am, because that's where the codependence starts to come in. Oh, now that you're following me, it's but I need to be willing to oh man, this is like such a big topic, because it's like you think of companies that die after their leader dies, because their ego would not allow, their humility would not allow them to release the controls, to let go of the expectations of what he or she had for the vision of the future, so that it can actually evolve based upon the people that are in service with him to the mission. And then it goes away, and then you have a challenge. I mean, you think I can think of leaders where the next leader that comes in is doomed, because he can't break through the cultural. He could be the best leader there is, but when the company creates an identity around an ego, the company itself is an ego driven machine. And then somebody who's humble comes in, and it's really, really challenging, takes a lot of time. And especially if it's another, and I'll go even back even further. The next guy, if he's also got an ego, oh boy, an ego on top of an ego is definitely the place of destruction. But it is difficult for the next guy. And it's one of the reasons why it's important when somebody retires from any kind of leadership position that they don't stay with the company these days. It's sad that it's that way, because the leaders are not creating the space to say, I don't mind about if I'm forgotten. I told you about John Vroman, and his mentality is one day he looks forward to sitting in a room full of guys with his front row dads, and somebody goes, "Man, I don't know who started this thing, but wow, it's been so powerful for me." Like, to have that awareness that that's part of his mission, is to be forgotten, but remembered in the premise of what it means to be a father, and to help fatherhood be remembered. Like, what a different concept than I want to be remembered. And and this is one of the reasons why I changed my name, in fact, from the company, from Less is More, like it was Less is More Media, Less is More Coaching, etc. It's a catchy name, but I pulled away from it because I really just didn't want it to be built on anything that was um, ego driven. And it was very easy to start to, the reason I even put that in place was because I started to feel internally that ego uh, taking shape, going, I'm going to own this thing that I've hated all my life. That's what it really boiled down to. The ego's going, oh, I'll show you. I'm going to turn less is more, less. Oh, hey, I'm more. I'm going to turn that into less is more. And I'm going to make me something out of this name. I'm like, why? Like, I don't need that. This is about us. It's about fusion. This is about our stories coming together. It's not about my story, it's about our stories. And that's the piece for me that has been kind of the burden of that, is to communicate that in a world that really is so ego driven. And that's it's my ego that continually screams at me, yeah, but if you go against the ego, guess what? You're going to get crushed. And I'm like, oh, so I want to teach people how to break free, how to put the ego in the co-pilot seat. But in doing so, I'm afraid that my ego is also going to be kicked out of the plane.
That's an interesting thing. And I think that you'll find it's a little bit different because people don't want to
That's just the
kick
story.
that. Oh, okay, I got you.
That's just the story.
That's part of the story.
Yeah, it's not real. It's not what it's true.
It's a potential fear.
That's right. It's just a fear.
But the reality is because I'm in that space now where I have a lot of men who follow me, and not because I'm the biggest or the strongest, but because of that passion and vision, like you said, that humility, where a true alpha, and this is where people get it mixed up, isn't the guy who's smashing like cans on his head and football spike and things and beating people up. A true alpha, and this is what I've had a lot of people talk to me about this, where I go, when I train my warriors, I train them to pass me. When we lock shields in a phalanx, when we create our wall of shields and we put them all together, the person next to me is guarding me. It does me no service to create acolytes. I need somebody stronger than me, if I can, guarding my side, and I need to be as strong as I can for them to guard theirs. It does not do me any service to do well, and then you need to do just well enough to be below me. I do not need servants. I need other leaders, other warriors, and a real leader builds other leaders up. That's why when you said, John, I want to get to the point where others are so strong, they don't even remember where this came from.
Yes, that is it for me. And I believe that that's the way of life that I want to model for my children as well, is I want my children to remember me as the guy who picked people up at all costs, who lifted them, who.
That goes back to the part that was interesting for you, though. The part that was interesting to say my humility came from, the word that came to me, the way you explained it, was an indifference. Something where I don't require you. I don't require you to follow. I don't require you to do these things, but I'm going somewhere and you're welcome to come. That indifference of make a choice. Are you with me or not with me? Either way, I'm going. But that shows confidence instead of attachment. It shows I, have that humility to know that I'm going to do this regardless of if you believe in me or not.
Yes.
And that part of it sounds like it's a high confidence, but it also is a high humility that I do not require a codependency on others in order for me to be successful.
Yes. It's the awareness, right, of me, and it is an awareness of my capacity to do anything that any other human can do, good, bad, or otherwise. And my ego grabbing a hold of that and trying to then say, no, I don't do that. I'm not that way. My ego wants to defend against my humanity and make me divine. And instead it doesn't know. In other words, I think, that's a whole rabbit trail I could go down. I won't take us there, but I can tell you that I think that the ego in and of itself has an element of the story of the fallen angel Satan in it. And the reason why I say that is because our ego is a necessary piece. It was created in us to give us guidance in a certain way. And it can, when it's not surrendered or humble in the midst of spirit, it will truly try to pave its own way as God, because it's not interested in connecting with the fullness of our oneness. Boy, that's like so esoteric. It's not. I want to simplify it somehow, but the idea of it is really just simply that our ego is just this lone wolf. Sometimes when it gets hurt, it starts to go, don't tap into that. That guy's not good. You don't want to be a part of that spirit, because then we have to face it in ourselves.
Sure. Well, it tries to protect itself in its own unique ways. Yeah. But this is the interesting thing, is where this is going to be a little bit of a tangent with a few pieces here.
Oh, let's go.
So it's interesting when it comes into this part where I think one of the most fascinating things that human beings can do, one of my favorite things that falls under a combination of denial and excuses, is justification. It is one of the most amazing things people can do, is people can do absolutely vile and cruel and monstrous things, yet still try to convince you that I am a good person. This is an amazing thing. There are people who find absolute pleasure in destroying the lives of others, and they sleep soundly at night somehow. Somehow they can tell themselves, I am good. I am, I'm the hero in the story, the anti-heroes, if you will. And you start to realize what you talked about with the ego, or even the bad leader, or the leader stepping down and the bad leader stepping up. You start to see what they worship. And like you said, with the fall of Satan, that actually created the second oldest religion of all time, meism. This was the pitch to Eve. You don't need God. If you eat this fruit, you will be like God. You don't need anyone else. It's all you. Me, 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 me. What are the addictions today? What are the big addictions that are happening? Attention. I am addicted to likes, followers, people who are commenting. How much attention am I getting? How many selfies are there? Me, me, me. We are in the most documented humans in history. Our girls have 20, 30, 40,000 photos in their camera reel, most of them and their friends. The most documented people of all time. Me. Who do I need to believe in? And what do you worship? Is it money? Power? Influence? What is it that we're looking at? And when you see somebody who has humility step down, you see what the next person worships, step up. There's a training I do with my coaches when it comes to using the map. When I'm trying to find where somebody is damaged on this thing, I use what I call an Epictetus compass. There's a quote from Epictetus, I'm going to make it a little more PC for people, is that your circumstances don't make a man, which is the circumstances don't make a person. They reveal the person to themselves. How people are handling things or what people do shows you who they are. I want to hear the words that people are saying, but their actions are so much louder. Hard to hear you through what you're doing. And so you can see that people reveal who they are by the way that they show what they worship. Money, attention, likes. And it's very easy, especially with burden of beauty these days, for women to get attention. All you got to do is wear less clothes. You'll get attention. Now you're getting noted. You're getting something. What do you worship? What is the cost? Where is your ego? Where is your humility? Where is your indifference? It's no longer there because it's all about me. I don't need anyone else. Me, 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 me. And when that person becomes your leader, the leadership falls apart because, like we said, true leadership and the purpose that you had comes from service. And when the service of others is removed and it turns into you serve me, everything changes.
Yeah. Which is an interesting thing, discussion to go back to a couple weeks ago that I know nobody has heard that discussion because we didn't get to that approval stage, I guess you could say. We can still pull some stuff out of it, but it's the whole aspect of respect. I think respect and humility have to walk hand in hand. And the moment that I say, well, I feel disrespected, we are immediately not in a humble position. Our ego is driving the ship and it's demanding of us that, well, we should be treated differently rather than treating ourselves as we believe we should be treated. Loving ourselves, caring for ourselves. And so what do? When we feel disrespected, we get mad and angry, which leads us down the path of denial, and which leads us down the path of let me distract. And then we're in this really downward cycle of stress and anxiety. It leads us to reactionary language. I mean, like everything's reactionary because
addiction,
addiction, all of it. And we get we're addicted to the reactions. Like our reactions are programmed by the fact that we are lacking the ability to see to recognize that the things that people say are broken in us are actually just human. They're just human.
Well, this is a whole discussion. Like that one sentence, I just did a 2-hour training on this week.
Oh, nice.
Which gets into denial, I believe, is society's largest curse at the moment.
Oh my goodness.
And like I did it 2 hours straight and still can keep going. I do believe that when I go into the aspect of where are people getting blown up the most, it's denial. I do not want to take this rabbit hole today,
I
but
get it. That's a good one though. Put it down and let's talk about that one because I think denial is a massive one for sure. Yeah,
but
it's I think that's what's so difficult about these conversations and why people want to, whenever I have conversations a lot of times, the reason they go all over the map is because it is all over the map. It's like it's so complex and it's it's not some nice little systematic approach to it, right? And so I think that's the part of, even when we talk about humility, it is not something that we achieve. It's something that, oh, I like what you said here a minute ago. It's your circumstances don't make the man, they reveal the man to himself, right? It's humility is the ability to allow your circumstances to reveal the things within you. It's allowing your circumstances to be the teacher.
and having the awareness that you're in that lesson.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you showed up to class today.
Yeah, and most people are not taught. It's the first skill that we teach in the Warrior's Way. The very first training, first we do the default program to understand who are you when you're on autopilot. But the very first skill is awareness. And people do not understand it's a skill. Did you see it? Because you cannot make a choice you do not know exists. And if you do not know you're in the middle of a lesson right now, you cannot learn it.
Yes.
So without this skill, not you're born with it. It's like confidence. It's a skill. It's if you practice this skill, and once people start going, I am now in tune to these choices, you start realize that you are sitting in a pool of excuses to deny that you are surrounded by opportunity.
Yes.
And they
Yes.
don't see it because that skill has never been nurtured. But once you practice your ass off, you start realizing I am surrounded by decisions to see, like, I am revealing myself to me. How did I handle that? Did I get angry? Did I have your reaction? Like you said, did I do a reaction instead of a response? How did I do that? That's who you are. Do you blame others? Well, it's their fault. I didn't do it. If they wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have had to. Who are you? Are you a blame thrower? Are you a person who gives power away to make others feel, in this case again, shame, guilt? I'm going to assess responsibility to you, and I do not have accountability, which again goes back to denial.
Yes. Yeah.
It's amazing to watch the system. The Epictetus compass lets you know where are you on this thing. And you're right, we're all over the map. And it gets into your belief system, which gets into your identity, and it becomes who you are as protection.
Yes. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Self-protective strategies abound in this culture, don't they?
Well, at least that's the brochure. Underneath is a lot more Machiavellian.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that is good. We definitely need to go down the river of denial. I'm sorry, I couldn't.
I saw what you did with the words.
What can I say? That could be a cricket one more than anything, actually. It's definitely crickets. That's a dad joke where your kids are looking at you like,
They're like, the river
Really?
of denial. What? They're like, it's in Egypt. All right, don't worry about
never mind. I love it. Oh man.
No, I think this is a good topic. Humility is a big thing, but I think this is also a part when I go back to the purpose part to this. To find what my purpose was also a surrender, not a gift.
Yeah.
You know, this was not me going like, I'm the freaking man. Like, this was like, man, that's a heavy job.
It is.
I surrender in order to gain power.
Give me an example of what that looked like. Give me an example of that look like, because I think that's an important piece for us to be able to be aware of in this, because I have some ideas too, but I want to hear like
here's a grandmaster
theory.
level. I got a grandmaster level of what like absolute growth and humility looks like. So we use Enneagrams often, like especially in the Warrior's Way. It's just one of the tools. It's not our this is not our everything, but it's really good to understand why do we do what we do, but there's also different levels of unhealthy, average to healthy versions of each personality type. Now, let's say there's like the 10 stages that people can be, 1 being the healthiest, 10 being the least healthy. When you look at these 10 stages, from number 2 down, they all use an operation system that's very similar, just in healthier to less healthy ways. But the jump from number 2 to number 1 is like a Grand Canyon jump. It is not the same as the other steps where you level up, level up, level up. Now I've done a little more healthy. Now I'm a little more open. Now I'm a little more understanding. But you're still using the same defense system. You're still using the same operation system. But going from level 2 to level 1 is a complete inversion of the entire system. It's a complete surrender of the entire way that you operate in all the other stages. And being able to go to that level, if you want to nerd out, it's like going Super Saiyan. You go from like, I was doing this fighting style, but in order to ascend, I have to do a completely different jump. It's a totally different system, and that levels me up. So I'll give you a few examples. Just type 8, for example, the challenger, the leader type, most aggressive, very, very assertive, will jump into any fray, enjoys conflict, doesn't like bullies, will protect and stick up for anybody who they feel that's unjust, and they have their own system of justice. They do not do vulnerability. Most of my 8s in groups end up washing themselves out. It's a high majority because they do not like to share in an open space, because vulnerability is weakness, and I do not show weakness. This system of protection makes perfect sense, but it also becomes their prison, because while they will block out all of the good, all the bad, they also block out the good, because anger is their protection. Anger is a separator. This means their entire system eats itself. There's a missing piece to it. I will keep myself and others safe by being the biggest, strongest, and the meanest, but I also don't want to be alone, and my system pushes people away.
Yeah.
To take it to the very top level is to completely surrender the defense system that I attack first. I have to be the meanest. I have to be the hardest. I have to be the strongest. I am bulletproof. And to go into vulnerability. My 8s have a hard time even complimenting people, because it still gives a degree of rejection is a possibility. If I said, I'm so proud of you, or I love you, or I appreciate you, and someone's like, I don't care. That's a rejection. That starts to be very painful. Betrayal is not necessary. Why would I give so much that I can be vulnerable to betrayal? Why would I open myself up to that? All they're going to do is just mistreat me. And with that system, they're going to defend themselves, because that has always worked in the past. The reason that system is there is because it's had success. And you're telling me to go to level 1 to be able to ascend, I have to surrender what has worked my whole life. I have to be open and vulnerable. This cannot be the way. This does not make sense. But in order to hit that ascension, you have to surrender your ego and say, let me open it up. Yeah. Go ahead. I will say that I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
I'll say that, man, I love you, or I appreciate you so much for what you did. Like, being able to be vulnerable even in compliments is one thing. To be vulnerable and let me share one of the things that if you know this, you could hurt me with it. Yeah. Being able to connect with somebody to say, I am imperfect. I am not bulletproof. I have scars to prove it. Makes it so now we can connect instead of saying, you should follow me because I am invincible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy because I have far more connection now, being able to go, I am so proud of you, man. I believe in you.
Yes.
That is vulnerability, and most cannot do it. So to hit the highest level of this, that surrender of that armor had to be evolved into a very different, instead of old medieval clank armor, I had to go into Tony Stark nanotech, something that I can turn on and off and use when needed.
Yeah.
And that is where you start getting into a mastery. Other ones are the same things. Type 3s, for example, workaholics, and they do not have empathy for others. And they find their gratification and their value in love comes from achievement. Yep. And if you have to achieve to get love, I have to be the champion. I have to be the best. I have to win. I have to accomplish. You get addicted to the work. You get addicted to doing as many tasks as possible. And in order to hit that top level of ascension, you have to no longer require love to come from outside. You have to accept it from inside. It is an inverse. It is a surrender to the entire system that has made you the best.
Yeah.
These are where it comes into like the highest level of humility, the highest level of surrender. But everybody who does this, it's like a 10x strength jump.
Yeah.
They become a 10 times stronger leader because they are willing to sacrifice the part of them that has gotten them success in order to be stronger doing the opposite of what they've done. It does not make sense on paper.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
make sense. It's completely crazy,
In
but it ends up working every time.
in your weakness, say, I am made, I am strong. Like that's the passage about it's, it seems so bizarre, but it's really in the small I, the small self, me, when that small self is small and weak, claim I am strong because I am unaware of myself in the midst of all of this. And and that's honestly where it's so funny how my ego, so this is a way that my ego trips me up, is is that I live that way, but the injustice for me is when others don't treat me that way. And then all of a sudden my ego goes, see, I told you what you're talking about is BS, and they called it out on you. And now, and I'm like, ah, wait, no, right? I think that's really where we get tripped up as sevens, is in that space of wanting to be something impactful in the world and really be game changers and see the best in people. And yet we struggle because we know that when we try to do that, people are going to flip the switch on us, and they're going to eventually poke holes in our ideas. They think they're going to try, and then we're going to question ourselves. We're going to be
Well,
like, oh no,
it
what
makes
if they're
sense
right?
that they would, especially for your enthusiast types, because enthusiasts
True.
don't like the negative.
That's right.
And people will come in like, yeah,
That's
but do you
right.
see the negative thing? Do you see the negative thing? Do you see the negative thing? And you're like, ah,
Yeah.
stop it.
I am trying not to pay attention to the negative thing. I'm trying to love myself here.
Yeah, the silver lining is beautiful. Your dark cloud, I don't want.
I know. That's right.
And
That's
that's where
so
it
it.
gets tough for them. That surrender, though, to be able to go, I'm going to get into the darkness here because I know it's necessary to bring out the light.
Yes.
And that makes sense on paper, but what a high level
I
of
know.
surrender that has to be done for my entire protection system has to go away for me to go and do the thing I've been avoiding my whole life.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's
it's so funny how that works. I
it's
mean, like the idea of light requires dark. So it's like you have to be in darkness to understand light.
but there
You
are
have to
no
understand it.
shadows. There's no
No,
shadows without light.
that's right. You have to be able to understand the opposite side, and and not deny our capacity for the other side. And I think that's the whole thing of humility. It is, I mean, literally the whole, man, I can't, I'm going down the rabbit trail of preaching a sermon again, but the whole Sermon on the Mount, literally, that's all he's pointing out. Oh, you've heard it say, thou shalt not murder. And I'm here to tell you, if you call your brother a fool or you are angry with your brother, well, you're a murderer. And you're like, whoa,
Listen.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
I had a whole religious debate with a group one time on this one. I'm like, let's go ahead. I think there's a lot of jumps in that one.
Oh, there's time.
And I think there's a lot of mistranslations that have been given out too, because I think that there's some
Yes,
misinterpretations in there.
it is. The whole premise of that, though, is just purely that you just need to be able to be aware that the moment you're judging someone for murder, that you're the same.
Yeah, I think that's Matthew
it.
7 where he gets into like,
Yep.
don't judge others unless you want to be judged, and don't judge like the splinter in my eye when you have an entire log in yours.
Yeah,
you know?
you got a tree plant
Yeah.
sticking out.
Pretty much the entire idea of that is like, you've got 10 times more, yet you're going to Goldilocks others.
That's
You're
right.
wrong. You should do
Yeah.
this. You should be
Yeah.
like that. You're bad. And it's really interesting that people do that, especially like in the religious field when you talked about church saying you should feel shamed so so you can get love.
I know.
Like, it's such an interesting system to knock you down so that I can have you be what I want you to be, so that way I'll give you love.
Yes.
This is also in relationships too, but that's a different conversation for a different day.
Agreed.
It's interesting to watch though. It's interesting to watch how people do this, and if you're paying attention to the Epictetus compass, they are revealing who they are to you. Yet
Yeah.
we're still trying to do that humanity aspect of acceptance. I want to be accepted by others. And if you're giving me a judgment, this is my measurement stick to see whether I'm good or bad. And if you say I should be wearing, Converse, or I should be wearing Nikes, and that's what makes me good or bad, then I'll get new shoes, and not realizing that somebody is trying to change you and they're revealing who they are. And if you allow them to change this one thing, they'll change another, and they'll
Yeah.
change another. And you'll call it doing a good thing, being inclusive, making friends, fitting in. These are all beautiful things that we call it. We'll call it love. I changed myself for my girl. She said she wants this. Happy wife, happy life. Let me go ahead and do that for her. But where does that stop? I am now relinquishing all of my autonomy, all of my individuality, all of my personality to make her happy. But at the end of the day, I promise you this, I have done it over and over. They don't know what makes them happy. They just
Right.
want stuff. And if you sacrifice you for the Goldilockses in the world, who are you? What life are you living? Because you're not you.
That's right.
And
I'm a
so
Goldilocks.
how many of these, yeah, you're wearing your Goldilocks wig and you're
That's right.
walking around in your pretty dress,
That's right.
but you're Papa Bear. And that's an interesting outfit you're wearing, Papa Bear.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. You just hit the nail on the head about something, or it formed in my mind when it hit, when it was judgment is a form of denial. It refuses to see it within me what I'm recognizing in others, and I will raise that up so that I don't have to deal with my own stuff.
Only
Very
if
powerful thing.
accepted. Only if accepted. If declined, it cannot plant roots. And that's
Say-
where awareness comes in. That's why we have to have that piece. That's why awareness is number one.
Oh,
If
agreed.
if
Yeah.
you catch the Goldilocks, you can decline the offer, and then you
Yes.
do not have to live in that judgment.
Yes.
But
And
you are correct.
the most beautiful aspect of this is also that awareness is really in and of itself the fixer. There's nothing that needs to be done. It's just literally being able to see it. Oh, there it was again. Oh, and the more you see it, the more you're like, I don't want that. It's not something that's serving me. But
Yeah.
we don't do that. A lot of us don't do that.
I feel like awareness is the main tool needed to do the most important thing that we have as human beings. Our most important superpower, the most amazing ability you have is choice.
Yes.
The foundation of everything that I have written on is all built on everything is a choice. It's not about what happens, it's how you choose to handle what happens. That is where your power lies. You can choose to be hot-headed and go off the deep end, or you can choose to be cool, understanding, or empathetic. It's the same scenario. It's just how did you handle it is different.
Yeah.
You can choose to listen to understand, or you can choose to condemn and judge. You can choose.
Yeah.
You get to decide. And I think that's where all the power really comes in, is we use our awareness to be able to make better choices.
Yeah.
That's
And
power.
we could go down that. We could definitely go down that path one day
Well,
of
that's
choice, too.
causality. That's a whole entire, that's one
a
whole
whole-
day. It's
That is, that's a
causality.
big one, and an important one. But it is, I mean, but most people don't want to deal with that. That's too much. Like most people are like, yeah,
Oh my
whatever.
gosh. They're
Like-
good with the tip of the iceberg. I'm
That's
like, this
right.
thing goes down phantoms. This thing goes deep.
Yes, yes.
Pretty
It's-
fun, man.
it
Good
is.
conversation, bro.
It was good, man.
I think there's a lot of power mixed into this thing, and a lot of things. One thing that I think about with humility, or even understanding, I'm going to leave it with a piece of awareness that we talked about this morning, of what makes it so people will change. What are the things that make it so people will stop holding on to the ego, or what makes it so people will hit a rock bottom moment, or they start to decide they're going to change. And I know of at least 4 main umbrellas, and you could probably fit a whole bunch of stuff under these umbrellas, but people change when they're hurt enough to have to change, when they learn enough to want to change, when they see enough to be inspired to change, or when they receive enough to be able to change.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
so a lot of times, especially rock bottom, which is one of the most powerful moments somebody can have, and again, that's a whole day by itself. Usually people hit that hurt enough to where I can't continue doing what I've been doing because I have now revealed to myself with my awareness that me seeing me is not who I want to be.
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty strong in itself. Me seeing me is not who I want to be. I have become the culmination of all of the Goldilockses that have put the belief systems in my head of what I'm supposed to be. And now I have revealed to myself what that is, and I do not agree.
Yes. Yes. That, that's the ultimate of conundrums that people today are absolutely not thrilled with, especially when it comes to their belief systems, whether it be political or yeah, it's
What do they
crazy.
worship? And if
Yeah.
they don't understand where their beliefs are, they are now going to be victims of the polarization that other people tell them that they should have.
Yeah.
And that's why your purpose and my purpose have job security at this moment, because
Yeah.
we break those curses and reveal their authenticity, not for me, but for themselves, to not be as strong as me, but hopefully stronger.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. The I'll leave you with my last thought too, and it's one that it's not mine. I mean, it's part of the giant stuff, and it's this tool called the change equation, and it basically sums up what you just said. Your resistance to change has to be less than or sorry, let me rephrase it. Your dissatisfaction with the status quo, your vision of the future, and the natural next step for you has to be greater than your resistance to the change. And resistance is literally is the obstacles in your way. So the barriers, the things you can't change. Like I can't change that a stop sign is in front of me. Like the stop sign is there. I have to, I can choose to stop. I can make a choice there, but I can create a barrier around, well, the stop sign says stop, or I can go, no, I'm going to go through. Or the hurdles that we have, the things that we have to overcome, and the gaps that are all over the place in our lives that we don't even realize exist in us. Like, oh, how do I need to fill this in first before moving forward. We are just so like we look at it and we see that gap, especially for me. That's what it has been. It's been this big, deep chasm of how do I fill this so I can move forward?
You really are excited about getting into this denial conversation, because that's all denial.
Oh,
Like when people deny the
absolutely.
signs.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a
Well,
stop sign. I don't
it's
see that sign.
insane. Yeah, I know.
There's an obstacle. I don't see that obstacle. I don't want to talk about it.
Yes. Yeah,
You can't wait, man. Listen, I think we're gonna have a good one.
that's gonna be good.
Denial is a powerful conversation, and yeah, it's very similar to what we talk about. The value of your solutions has to outweigh the value of your problems, and until that happens, you will change nothing.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. If anybody wants to, I have a one thing to leave any of you big brains out there who have made it this far in here. I have a challenge for
Heck
you.
yeah.
And you too, there is one curse I have yet to break. I have beaten everything: comparison, denials. We've gotten into everything from anxiety to depression, PTSD, alcoholism, addiction. We have beaten them. They are beatable. I know how to beat them. There's one curse I have not been able to defeat, and I have not heard anyone yet actually defeat it. Anybody thinks that they know what it is, but then once I explain it, they say, oh, I don't work with those clients. So the curse is misery equals love. What this is you see the people who, when things go wrong, they can't wait to tell everyone. These are the people who only have negative stories. These are the people who tell everything that's gone wrong in my life. Woe is me, woe is me. And oftentimes they can be highly charismatic and get great things to come into their life. And the more beautiful and more pure and more awesome something is, a good relationship or something that came into a lot of money, no matter what it is, no matter what blessing comes their way, they find a way to sabotage to be able to share the negative. The reason this is so difficult is because most of us have a rock bottom point that makes us have to go, whoa, I got to slow down. This is going a direction that's not good for me. With misery, is where attention and love and value comes from. What is the depth of the misery that they can endure? It seems bottomless. There is no rock bottom. You can take them right to the bottom of the ocean, and they can't wait to tell everybody how they're at the bottom of the ocean.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Love equals misery, which means there is no place to go, hey, don't you see that the value of the solutions can outweigh the value of the problem, when the value of the problem is how I get love?
Yeah.
I have not found any way through this yet, because it is a complete denial of any willingness. There is no need to change, because the worse things are, the more love I receive from attention. But this means they have to sabotage everything in their life. They use people, they abuse people, they are cruel, they are selfish, they are mean, and the more people don't like it, the more I can share how bad everyone treats me.
Yes. Yeah. That's interesting. It sounds like a Four's dilemma in a lot of ways.
They create it's a self-fulfilling prophecy for sure.
Yeah.
And I have a sister who has this curse, and I know many people who have family members who have this curse. And I have not, this is their identity. They are the problems, but they only see the problems as everyone else. Everyone else is the
Yes.
problem, and that's how they get love, is to tell everybody how bad they were treated, when they completely omit their part of the story, of course.
Yes.
Like, well, you were abusing that guy and he left you. Like, no, what I'm telling you is, no matter how much I do for everyone, everyone always leaves me.
Yeah. Wow.
If any of you out there have been like, I can beat this and here is how it is done, I don't want to know the answer. I want to know the steps. Don't tell me what a Rubik's Cube solved looks like. Show me, like, this is the way that you solve that problem. I have beaten anything that's run our way. Everything from suicide to, extreme denials. I've seen them and beat them. As long as there's willingness, there's a way. This one eats willingness. And there is none. Because the worse it is, the happier they are.
Yeah. I have some perspectives on it, but we won't do it now.
Yeah, break it down and let's see what you find. This is a cool assignment for anybody out there who's in the field or just loves a really good puzzle. In any case, I feel like this is a good place to stop for us for today. Man. And we'll definitely be posting this out soon, but I'm very excited to have these. I have, obviously, our conversations reveal that we need more conversations, because we're like, that could be a full 2 hours. That could be an hour in itself. We get into denial, causality, confidence. There's so many pieces. Respect. What the heck are these things and how do they work? Happiness. We can go all day.
Oh, absolutely.
That means this is a foreshadow for future episodes.
I love it.
And I'm excited too. So Les McDaniels, the Bearded Wisdom, such an honor every time we get to do this. Let's do more.
Ditto. Yep. Let's do it, man. I love it.
All right, brother. We'll see you guys later.